Guten Tag und willkommen to episode 4 of my Germany vlog. This time we're going to be looking at how Bismarck tried to unify Germany through trying to put pressure on groups that he considered to be a threat to German identity. In fact, he labelled these Reichsfeinde, enemies of the Reich. These were people who, these were basically socialists who had a more internationalist agenda, and often ethnic minorities who didn't want to be part of Germany because they wanted to be part of a country that they felt more attached to. The Reichsfeinde agenda cuts both ways, really. It is both aimed at suppressing those groups and in trying to encourage them to feel more German. But also, I think you need to remember that this is a policy aimed really at those who do feel German, to kind of bind them together by this sense of we are German, we're not like those fringes of Germany. And there's a sort of sense of encouraging the core of Germany to unite around that, particularly the middle classes, who Bismarck considered really important to this, and in part to kind of distract them from hankering after further reforms, which he didn't want to give them. So this was a sense of trying to create a united Germany around his concept of that. So we're going to deal with those two groups separately. Of course, the culture camp is part of this too, but we're going to deal with socialists and the ethnic minorities in this vlog, and you can look back at the culture camp in episode 3. So the socialists, the problem with socialists is that they have a more internationalist agenda, as I've already said. Socialists would feel more camaraderie and more perhaps connection with the working class and socialists of other countries than they would with the aristocracy of their own country. So they very much kind of see class as being the thing that unites rather than nationality. And so because of that, socialists opposed the war in 1870, which had brought the states of Germany together, the Franco-Prussian War. And then also in 1871, in the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War, there was an uprising in Paris, which led to the establishment of the Paris Commune for a couple of months between March and May 1871. This was a socialist uprising against the government of France, and the socialists of Germany supported that. I mean, not physically, but, verbally, emotionally. And Bismarck saw this as being a warning sign, a danger sign, I guess. Socialism was also becoming more organised in Germany in 1869. The Socialist Workers' Party, the SDAP, was founded. And actually, it's the SDAP that continues through the 1870s, although in 1875 they merged with another group to become what we think of as the Socialist Party. I think you could probably call them the SPD if you want to be pedantic. They are actually called the SDAP through this depth study period. By 1877, they had got 12 seats in the Reichstag and 500,000 votes. And they were campaigning for improved working conditions and improved conditions generally for the proletariat. They were campaigning for social and political equality. And these things were things that Bismarck, as a Junker and as a sort of friend of the Conservatives, did not want to see happen. And so because of that, he starts to campaign against them, and he uses as an excuse for further action against them, 2 assassination attempts on the Kaiser in 1878. These were 2 kind of unconnected events, both attempts to shoot the Kaiser, and the first is by an anarchist. The second is not really sure the motivations of the chap that did it, because he died in the attempt. He had some sort of loose, casual connections with socialism, but neither were socialists. But Bismarck uses this as an opportunity to jump on the socialists, and with the help of conservatives and the National Liberals, brings in October 1878 the anti-socialist law, which bans socialist organisations, not the Socialist Party themselves, but bans organisations, socialist meetings. So it kind of bans all the things that they do to work and to be socialists. It bans trade unions. It bans socialist publications. 45 newspapers are banned as a result, and 1,500 people are arrested over the next from 1878 to 1890, over the next 12 years. And the wearing of socialist insignia is one of those socialist badges, is one of those things. And so they go through a sort of phase of wearing like red ribbons. They get arrested for that. Red roses. They get arrested for that. Women apparently ended up wearing red petticoats, and that was considered kind of like a bit dicey to arrest people for what colour underwear they were wearing. So it is quite punitive. A bunch of socialists leave the country and set up headquarters in Switzerland, but it is also quite ineffective in terms of suppressing the socialist vote. It is true that in 1881, and all these dates are beyond our depth topic, which is kind of a funny thing about the socialist thing, that it goes on into the 80s. It's not just an 1870s thing, but in 1881, their vote does drop from 500,000 to about 300,000. But in 1884, it's risen back up to 500,000. In 1887, it's 750,000, and by 1890, it's 1.5 million, or 1.4 million to be more precise, people voting for the socialists. So, and I think they got 35 seats in that election. As a result, and they kind of got round some of these legal restrictions by meeting as gym clubs or cycling clubs, and then talking about socialism while they were there. So there's quite a lot of creativity thrown in to this attempt. As a result, in the 1880s, Bismarck changes tack and actually introduces some socialist welfare legislation, partly because as a Protestant he does feel like there's a requirement and a legitimacy to kind of look after the population, but also to try and steal the thunder of the Socialist Party. He introduces sickness and accident insurance and old age pensions to give Germany one of the best welfare programs in Europe at that time, probably well ahead of the British welfare program. That's all that sort of 1880 stuff is beyond the depth topic that we're looking at. But the point to remember here is that Bismarck was concerned about socialism. That was a growing concern through the 1870s. And it's a concern that he's able to share with the National Liberals, but then also with the Catholic Centre Party too. However, he is also, like the College camp, ineffective in his actions against them. So that brings us nicely onto the minorities. These minorities were actually often Catholic, and that's because they're sort of the French people living in Alsace-Lorraine, stolen from Catholic France in the Franco-Prussian War. These are the Polish people living on the eastern borders of Germany, who there was no Poland at this time, so they were kind of dispossessed, I guess. And there are also some Danes, particularly living in northern Schleswig, which had been taken from Denmark in the initially in the 1864 war. In fact, these Danes, if we deal with them first, there had been an agreement to give the northern Schleswig Danes a plebiscite, a referendum, if you like, on whether they wanted to stay in Germany or go back to Denmark. But this was quietly dropped by Bismarck, and they're not given that opportunity. These people, though, are often characterised by kind of wanting to return or establish the country that they feel is theirs. So go back to France, go back to Denmark, or establish Poland. In his attitude to these people, Bismarck has his main policy is to try and establish a sort of cultural nationalism. So in doing that, a lot of that's through education. Nationalism is a national curriculum subject in Germany. And they teach about the Franco-Prussian War and how amazing it was. Strangely, of course, that is partly much more of a Prussian thing than a German thing, because it's Prussia that fights that war. They are taught to be loyal to the Kaiser and to the Kaiserreich through textbooks saying how great the Kaiser is, through not just through education in school, but through processions in the streets and the little festivals and fairs about how great Germany is. Germany Day. In fact, Sedan Tag, Tag meaning day, Sedan is the Battle of Sedan, S-E-D-A-N, in the Franco-Prussian War. Sedan Tag was a celebration that was held in Germany all the way up to 1914, although again, there is that issue with it being Prussian rather than German. And the German language is also very prominent in education, and teaching in other languages was banned. And Polish was banned in law courts as well. So there's a real suppression of the culture of those minority groups, and a real promotion of German and nationalism. The textbook makes mention of expulsions of Poles and Jews who are not German citizens as well, although I think that's more of a thing that happens in the 1880s. About 30,000 Poles and Jews who still had Russian citizenship were removed, and partly that's to allow for a state-funded initiative to settle Germans in lands that, particularly in Polish lands, to kind of, I guess, to dilute the amount of Polish nationalism in those areas. The impact of this was, well, firstly, that those groups felt oppressed. Between 1871 and 1914, 400,000 French people leave Alsace-Lorraine, despite the establishment of two successive moderate governors of Alsace-Lorraine, who kind of stood up for the Alsace-Lorrainers to the federal government, and sought to represent them and promote them. Despite that, these people leave, and of course, at the end of the treaty, at the end of the First World War, in the Treaty of Versailles, Alsace-Lorraine returns to France. Poles suffered through the culture camp as well. Cardinal Ledachovsky was imprisoned as a result of firstly refusing to stop teaching in the Polish language, and then secondly, well, he's imprisoned once, but it's to do with it's to do with refusing to stop teaching in the Polish language, but then also refusing to hand over control of seminaries, which are Catholic training schools for priests. He's supposed to hand control over those to the Prussian government, and he refused to do so. So he was imprisoned. And he's a good example of a Polish cultural leader who was persecuted quite openly at this time, Cardinal Ledachovsky, which I would spell Ledachowski. But, and again, the but is important here, these places do not stop feeling Danish, Polish or French. You can see that by the people that leave from France. You can see that by the fact that all these places actually do gain a measure of independence at the end of the First World War. And you can also see it in the continued voting for separatist parties in the Reichstag. The Danish party wins about 2 seats at a time. The Poles and the Alsace-Lorrainers win more than that. You can look them up on Wikipedia or somewhere else. But they're pretty stable all the way through to the First World War. So Bismarck's strategy for dealing with the ethnic minorities is limited in its success. He is able to kind of suppress them. Those feelings don't spread. They don't cause any unrest in Germany itself. He does genuinely create a sense of a united Germany and a German nationalism. So in that sense, it's a positive thing. But in terms of helping those people feel part of that Germany and creating an inclusive sense of what it is to be German, he does not succeed, and that therefore makes ruling Germany a bit more difficult for him. I hope that's helpful, and I will see you next time.